This is BBC One for London and the South East. Now, the 1 o'clock news with Rita Chakrabarti and Natalie Graham.
The government insists that Boris Johnson is still very much in charge, despite being admitted to hospital with coronavirus. The Prime Minister, who's been ill for 10 days and has worked while in self-isolation, will be back as soon as possible, says a Cabinet colleague.
I think we all do, that he has a speedy recovery and he gets back to number 10 and can take charge in the way he would want to.
We'll be asking how challenging it'll be for the Prime Minister to continue his work from his hospital bed. Also this lunchtime, Scotland's Chief Medical Officer, Catherine Calderwood, resigns after making 2 trips to her second home against her own lockdown advice. Continued concern that sunny weather is making people linger longer outside than absolutely necessary when going to exercise. A sharp spike in calls for a national helpline for victims of domestic violence, which experts link to the coronavirus restrictions. And the hotels being used to house low-risk patients to free up hospital beds for coronavirus patients.
In London and the South East, ferry companies say they're struggling and warn essential food and medication imports could be put at risk. And bus drivers tell us they're scared to go to work after several colleagues die of COVID-19.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. A member of Boris Johnson's cabinet has said the Prime Minister is still very much in charge of the government, despite being admitted to hospital last night with coronavirus. The Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, said it was hoped that after medical tests, Mr Johnson would be back in Downing Street as soon as possible. The Prime Minister tested positive for coronavirus 10 days ago. The Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, who'd previously been tasked to stand in if the Prime Minister was unable to work, chaired today's coronavirus meeting. With our first report this lunchtime, here's our political correspondent, Helen Katz. Thanks very much, Nick. A reminder now of our top story. The government insists that Boris Johnson is still very much in charge, despite being admitted to hospital with coronavirus. And in the past few minutes, he's put a statement on social media thanking the NHS for taking care of him and others in this difficult time. Well, that is all from the BBC News at 1, so it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.